Good afternoon, dear colleagues, guests, invisibly present at this session of the Dissertation Council. Today is the 10th of July, 19 hours, so time and date for the session of our Dissertation Council. Let me declare open a session of our Dissertation Council. The subject of today's consideration is thesis by Arkhipov, Vladislav Vladimirovich, submitted to the degree of Doctor of Legal Sciences, academic specialization 12-0201, theory and history of law and state, history of legal and political teachings, on the theme, semantic limits of law, conditions of medial term, theoretic legal interpretation. Under the order of Petersburg University of the 23rd of March 2020, our meeting is held in the remote access mode, which includes my colleagues, members of the council, and the degree applicant and his consultant. Also, I have to validate for the Dissertation Council. The Dissertation Council has been appointed on the 2nd of March 2020, and myself, Vladimir Vladimir, Doctor of Legal Sciences, Professor of the Department of Theory and History of State and Laws in Petersburg University, was appointed chairman of the Dissertation Council. And I am pleased to introduce members of our Dissertation Council: Lukovskaya Genevra Igorovna, Doctor of Legal Sciences, Professor of the Department of Theory and History of State and Laws in Petersburg University. Genevra Igorovna, can you hear and see us? Yes, I can. Vladimirovich Vladimirovich, Doctor of Legal Sciences, Professor of the Department of Theory and History of State and Law of the Petersburg Law Institute, branch of University of Prosecutor's Office of the Russian Federation. Vladimirovich, can you see and hear us? Yes, good afternoon, dear colleagues. I see and hear you, thank you. Nikolai Viktorovich, Doctor of Legal Sciences, Professor, Head of Department of Russian Academy, President of Russian Federation. Nikolai Viktorovich, can you see? Can you hear us? Yes, I can see and hear you very well. Thank you. And Brian Bix, Professor of University of Minnesota, United States of America. Professor Bix, can you see? Can you hear us? Please say yes.
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Then I'm afraid we will have to take a technical break. This technical issue is not eliminated. Colleagues, let's agree on a 5-minute technical break because the scientific consultant has some issue with sound. Is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
Thank you.
Мы сейчас все запустим. То есть я тогда объявляю о...
Илья, все готово к трансляции?
Ильи тоже не слышно. И все-таки могу ли я начать?
Сейчас 1 минуту отвечу на ваш вопрос.
Угу.
Все готово, можно продолжать.
А с Игорем Юрьевичем или без? Я имею в виду, звук удалось настроить или нет?
Игорь Юрьевич подключится в процессе. Продолжаем.
Уважаемые коллеги,
Dear colleagues, dear guests, let us resume our session. The technical issue, we are working on it, and we hope that Igor Yurovich, the scientific consultant, will join us later. Otherwise, it will not happen. I shall read out his review as a scientific consultant. Of course, let me introduce the degree applicant, Vladislav Vladimirovich Arkhipov. Can you see? Can you hear us? Yes, dear Elena Vladimirovna, yes, we can see and hear you. Thank you. Okay, let us, all the members of the Dissertation Council and the degree applicant, and hopefully the scientific consultant are present, and we can all hear each other. Our session is being held in remote access mode under the orders of Vladislav University. They did the 23rd of March. I invite all the participants to watch the procedure. In case there's a technical failure and you stop seeing or hearing someone, please inform me immediately. In that case, I shall call a technical break until the issues are eliminated. And if the connection with me is lost, I ask Lukovska Ginevra Igorevna, next on the list, to call a technical break. Ginevra Igorevna, do you agree? Yes, I agree. Dear council members, do you mind? Again, do you mind? Have any objection? No. Gavovich, yes, better to keep the microphone switched off for better connection. Of course, I agree. We have no objections. Let us continue. And as justly mentioned by Ilya Lvovich, please keep the microphone switched off for better connection, better sound. Please remember to switch them on when it's your turn to speak. Let me also inform you that our meeting is being recorded and broadcast live at the Dissertation University website, and the session is being held in Russian with simultaneous translation from Russian to English or from English into Russian. Also, I'd like to inform you that the applicant page currently displays an email address to which anyone during our session, all the listeners of our session can send their opinion or questions to the applicant online, questions related to the thesis and the ongoing scientific discussion. presentation. These questions shall be forwarded to me by our technical department, and I shall read them out during the discussion period. It is also important that all questions should be related to the thesis, the presentation of the degree applicant, and also please mention your name, position, and place of employment. Questions that are not related to the scientific discussion, to the discussion of the thesis, evaluation of the thesis shall not be presented. According to the order, the warden at the Vladimirovich University, the degree of candidate of science, doctor of science, a session of the dissertation council is considered competent if at least 2/3 of the approved composition of the dissertation council, but not less than 4 persons are present. Our dissertation council consists of 5 members. All members are present, all in the remote active mode. The audio-visual contact has been established with all of them, the degree applicant. Thus, we have the quorum. I'm the curator of our session, Khrushcheva Larisa Viktorovna, for the Dissertation Council Activities Department, to draw up the attendance list in which all the members present and the working mode should be indicated. The session of the Dissertation Council is the duration shall be approximately 3 hours. Since all the members of the Dissertation Council and the degree applicant have this procedure, let me not read the entire document. Dear colleague, do you agree? Perhaps you have any objections to the procedure? No. Thank you, Ginevra. Professor Biggs, do you have any objections regarding the procedure?
No objections.
No, don't. Nikolai Viktorovich, Lvovich, you have no objections? No objections. And since there are no objections, let us proceed to the procedure. And here, I have to give the floor to the scientific consultant of Vladislav Vladimirovich, the Doctor of Legal Sciences, Professor of the Department of Theory, History, State and Law at Petersburg University, to Igor Yuryevich Lekhin. Let me ask Igor Yuryevich if he can hear us. Unfortunately, Igor Yuryevich cannot hear us. And then his review shall be presented later after Vladislav Vladimirovich and Dissertation Council members present their reviews. And now let me introduce Vladislav Vladimirovich. This is by Vladislav Vladimirovich for the degree of candidate of legal sciences. It's accepted for the defense by the Academic Secretary of the University. And this is not number 1443/1. He wrote his thesis at St. Petersburg University, and his scientific consultant, this is, as I already mentioned, a professor of Department of Theory and History of Law, Kazlikhin Igor, the number of publications which set out the main scientific results of the thesis. It's 20 in journals from the list approved by the Ministry of Education and Science of the Russian Federation, 18 publications, and in journals indexed in Web of Science and Scopus Scientific databases, 2 publications. The applicant submitted to the Academic Secretary of St. Petersburg University a full package of documents and for acceptance of the thesis for consideration and defense. All the documents according to the information are received from the curator. Larissa Khrushcheva comply with the requirements set by the order of what degrees and are kept at the degree applicant's attestation file. Copies are available from the Office of the Dissertation Council Support Department. And before I give the floor to the degree applicant, Vladislav Vladimirovich, let me ask Dissertation Council members any questions to the degree applicant. Is there a need to read the highlight the documents submitted by the degree applicant? Jennifer Grevna? No, we have no question. It's not necessary to disclose the list. Yeah, Richard, I don't have any questions. So I think it's Professor Biggs. Shall we read the list of documents?
There's no need.
Okay, thank you. And now let me give the floor to the degree applicant, Vladislav Vladimirovich Arkhipov, for his presentation outlining the key points of his study. Let me remind that following our procedure, approximate time for your speech should not exceed 20 minutes. Please, Vladislav Vladimirovich, the floor is yours. Dear Yelena Vladimirovna, dear council members, dear listeners, let me introduce to you my thesis. The theme is the semantic limits of law in conditions of medial term, theoretical and legal interpretation. For the purpose of my presentation, I made some slides. Let me warn you that this presentation is substitute the thesis itself. It outlines the key points of my work. The term itself, limits of law, in the term semantic limits of law is new, developed to outline the problem to which my thesis is dedicated. The closest term is semantic normality, used by Matthias Korea, that is was used in a slightly different sense, and it's different from what I'm going to talk about. So I may start with a following remark. If I have to the title of the work I would call virtual reality of law, or virtual law in the virtual space. But the style of scientific text has to be precise. I chose another term which is used throughout my thesis. Also, because in the classical scientific hard to ignore personal and methodological foundations. I would like to say that the thesis and the theme I became after a long time when thinking of legal aspects of contemporary technological phenomena. Here, by way of introduction, the virtual reality, the theoretical legal assessment today, people are more and more interested in the digital economy world. That big theme, which I've been working on for a long time, and in my own research. I would like to start with a few words about the methodology and the methodological correctness. And indeed, this theme, limit of in the medial space, if we use the concept from humanitarian concept of the world, is relevant of the study course, in my opinion, lies in the fact that in the digitalization of the society, contemporary digital culture, communication is a new phenomena emerge, and as a result of that, they affect the development of law and the concept of law in legal science. As as context, medial turn can be mentioned. As a result, the term I chose this term as the best one from philosophy, which includes game turn, the digital turn, describe contemporary virtual reality. And here it's necessary to say that virtual reality, of course, is a term which in the natural language and in my thesis is used in different senses. And and finally, one hand, a figurative sense and the philosophy of law, and it's in law using the expression of heart, society transformation. Prerequisites of work two circumstances, two areas of research. First is the idea of the limits of law described in some works. Fuller, whose work my candidate's thesis was dedicated. I mentioned already that even from the point of positivism, a law of in the limits of commonly shared provisions, morality. But of course, at the time, a law was written. Virtual reality was not idea has not been developed in the sense that it using this is the second have made in areas, though game industry, the concept of game is not serious industry, is that it is already a subject of serious scientific study for several decades as a legal science, list, interest in the social sciences, in multi-user games, connected with interaction of people, virtual value. And this interaction, the classical question is virtual property, virtual ownership, is famous 2006, is the economic analysis, linguist from his digital icon, digital portraits, is talking to the users of Second Life and many pages, virtual process. We may continue about this, talking about these details for a long time. Yeah, there are many spheres, many issues here, and in all such cases, we have some legal collision, some kind of legal collision. This was my initial hypothesis. It's not of private character, connected with all kinds of online games, which can be also applied to contemporary phenomena such as cryptocurrencies and actionable technological issues. Such subject will always be part of the being part. So this is only the initial requisite for my research hypothesis, because these types of relations have similar features with other practices that I shall mention earlier. So the general question, which determines the provisions is this. Is it possible the conception lies in one concept, which is partly related to philosophy and the dogma, law, additional boundary, in violation of which, because the law, in the event of collision with a particular phenomenon of media reality, will be absent, contrary to common sense, and how can it be identified? In a sense, this is paraphrased a famous logical problem used by the Dutch theoretician, culture theoretician, philosopher Johan Huizinga in the first half of the 20th century, borrowed by modern legal science. And within this hypothesis, I conducted my own study, which included theoretical and practical components, parts, and the results were a summary of provisions put out for defense. The provisions are summarized in the slides. The first provision started with the idea that the issue connected with virtuality, in a sense, is emphasized or determines that one of the priority tasks of the theory is rethinking law in conditions of medial turn and virtuality and simulation. In some cases, it's not justified to use the apply to term or to relation related to subjects don't have serious nature. And so this in this the key components of the provision of the medial turn is in the digital turn, is for new media characterized by digital presentation, automated operation, where the two contexts the same phenomenon, as mentioned by Vladimirovich. And the second component is the gaming turn. It was always starting in the ideas of the gamification theory, practices, as some social practices. And I think that in some cases, communication, well, they become less serious. So the game in turn was represented in the works of Resens, who said using this very term in the framework in the last decade. And in addition to that, of course, prerequisites for this game in turn we should mention Huizinga and who were not who did not study law, but studied related phenomena. And as for empirical material used, talking not only about games, something serious, the definition of which I have given, the problem empirical material confirms the existence of the problem, which of the calculations mediated by the medium can be considered as most important. And so the problem area is broader than the legal conditions of gaming activity. This area became the starting point. In the thesis, I analyzed the empirical material carefully and such examples as such as information, distributed information by the internet, historical law, all these examples have similar features. make a hypothesis about absurdity, or non-serious prohibited information, blocking for serious reasons, such as, for example, prohibition to spread recipes for making explosives. And in that situation, of course, there is a hypothesis that law application, there's no valid explanation with plain, open, rational discourse at the moment. There is no, and I'll try to make up this gap. And as I already mentioned, the next provision, good for defense, it's a problem. Can be described as universal, as interpretation of legal text, and interpretation of legal text in turn is interpreted as the problem of absurdity of results and unclear meaning, and how they were seen by Hart and later by Andrei Marmar in his monograph interpretation of law, explained element of Hart's approach and interpretation of which he spoke this time. And the most relevant of existing approaches to absurdity and explanation of legal text is viewed in pieces from moral limits to concepts. This logic seem unsatisfactory and cannot describe the relationship of law to medial space. Cannot be used to make conclusions about absurdity and how absurd interpretation virtual reality. But even in Russian legal practice, judicial practice, the word absurd, common sense, something related to common sense, is used quite frequently. The concept of magic circle is directly aimed at considering the issue real phenomena such as law, social methods, does not answer this question. The given and valid answer, and the concept of the magic circle, Miyakas wrote into a word. There's no magic circle. It's being used at the moment. But the difference between real and virtual is such differentiation is necessary from application law. And let me proceed to the main point. The thesis suggests two criteria to explain in what cases the result of interpretation application of law. Both criteria are necessary and sufficient. First criteria is criterion of reality, which looks at reality of object as one of the most important conclusions that there in the matter of all the relations between subject, gaming, relations, serious, non-serious, and the methodological state. The legal context, the new criteria is criteria of functional context, what's the central meaning of a legal norm. To be more accurate, the meaning of the word used in the legal text. And if such correspondence exists, can be expressed if something acts as X, then it is X from the point of legal norm. So let me give a practical example example, a garbage trash criterion is those property. And in that situation, or in similar situations, virtual reality, the users see interaction as real. And this seems satisfactory, but not in all the cases we can talk about material law and apply law. For that purpose, we need the second criterion, the criterion of seriousness, which, in my opinion, is the main point of the thesis. And my thesis, I suggest something that has not been before, interpreting subject of law, legal questions, as a generalized medium, symbolic medium, in the term to Parsons and predecessors, routine in several words. That means a concept similar to social concept, capital concept, used to evaluate subjects of social relations as an object as some social through media correspond to a communication system of the society, values, which is relevant for every member of the society, and thus, in case of such social values, then these subjects are not objects, are not objects. So it's possible to include them in the circle of possible meanings of a word used in the legal text. So the quality of this converted social value can be used to determine what is virtual and what is real. And not to go beyond the limit, I shall sum it up quickly. The semantic limits of law mean above mentioned limits determined by generalized symbolic media. And this concept expresses some legal philosophical idea, but the relation of legal law to real law is related and application of law. In my cases, I use an approach how this concept can be applied specifically in specific cases. I will be happy to explain this, but I understand the time limit tells me to sum it up. So this criteria mentioned in combination with each other, there can be four situations where when two criteria are not met, the object is not serious and not real. And as mentioned in this and explained in my thesis, these situations correspond to absurdity and sense, and what is not serious, not real in the social sense is this is a result of application of law. What is serious and real and common sense? What is in between? Choice of various values, valid, and maybe is not acted. And the task is was to identify a sphere, and the methodological potential of this concept seems to be impressive, and uses the term of itself that enables us to create limits of application of law from the point of semantics, from significant, socially significant approach, legal terms, and so the significance can be quite at least for me personally, I already have some personal examples where discussion based on has what is relevant and what is irrelevant for legal practice. The conclusions, the thesis, of course, longer. What I can present here because time limit, and unfortunately, the thesis contains a number of additional conclusions for maybe maybe to use the future research. I'm going to finish giving the quote about the physical can destroy human biologically, but intellectual violence can destroy the human as a social being. So this is one of the conclusions, which one of my conclusions. Let me emphasize that this is some kind of poetical frame for one of the same well-known ideas, but the essence of my thesis is can be expressed application of the class of generalized symbolic media in the sphere of the digital media space. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Vladislav Vladimirovich, for such a good presentation of the results of your work. Dear members of the Dissertation Council, now we can ask questions on regarding his presentation. Dear colleagues, do you have questions to Vladislav Vladimirovich? Ginevra Igorevna? Yes, I have a question, please. I have a question. Vladislav Vladimirovich wrote his candidate's thesis dedicated to philosophy of law, and later he worked on this subject, and today in his presentation he also referred to it. That's interesting for me from the point of what is the opinion of the image? Can we consider the concept of your semantic limits of law in a sense a variety of the natural law of Fuller? Is this a variation of Fuller's concept? Thank you. Please go ahead for the topic. Dear Ginevra, dear Vladimir, dear thank you for your question. Yes, I especially focus on Fuller so much to emphasize this continuity, the development of his ideas, the fact that the opinion of Fuller, as he himself described understanding of law, naturally reflected in the book, because one of the company conclusions is this, that the theory of in the sense used in my thesis can be used as a feature of law. Of course, it's not the only possible feature, but this is a relative, an important feature, a relevant feature. And what law has to contain claim for seriousness from the point of common sense, how the way it has been defined in the thesis. So here we're talking that there, in the logical sense, natural, reasonable, for the reasonable, adequate, corresponding to the necessary requirement, applied requirements to law, legal, the use of legal norms and interpretation of legal text. So I believe that exactly this conclusion claim to seriousness that can be interpreted as a complementary part, claim to righteousness can be constitutional naturalism, understanding of law can be interpreted as an integral law. And a last brief comment is we see many cases, empirical examples, that even if there is no serious attitude to law, that means that it stops to be applied. It stops to be seen as part of the legal system. And I think that time to give answer does not give me more opportunity to give a better answer to your question. Thank you. Vladimirovich, dear members of the Dissertation, please, do we have more questions at this point? If you allow me, Nikolai Viktorovich, yes, my review paid attention to the fact that you consider, but briefly, the right to be forgotten. Is an interesting theme regarding the virtual word. So what do you think? Is it included in semantic limits of law, or is it outside semantic limits of law? Thank you, dear Nikolai Viktorovich. This is a very relevant issue. And for theory of law, for these human rights, the right to be forgotten, Gonzalez, human rights court, special norm of law, or on information around information protection, which is after the European regulation on data protection. In this context, this law, from the methodology, of course, is included in the semantic limits. This value quite real and has converted social value. But in I gave this, used it as an example, that the very object of this law is right. Is where it loses its relevance, and information has lost relevance in my thesis, is I compare it with something that is not obvious, and in my opinion, is connected to exclude from the realm of law something that is not connected, that has no value. So that's how I would interpret this. Thank you, Vladislav Vladimirovich. Professor Biggs, do you have questions to the applicant at this point?
Yes. One quick question. When your thesis is about semantic limits, and when you talk about the limits of law throughout the paper, I wonder sometimes you mean limits in very different senses. Like when Lon Fuller says if you don't meet certain procedural requirements, it doesn't count as law, or it's very ineffective law. When John Stuart Mill says you shouldn't prohibit an action that hurts only the actor, that's a statement that this would be unwise or immoral to do. When Douglas Husak says we criminalize too much, that says it's unwise, but not impossible. There's a sense, when Aquinas says that the law should not cover what happens in your heart, the human law should not cover what happens in your heart, that's saying about what's impossible or very difficult. And then there's a sort of sense from Kant or from Wittgenstein, the later Wittgenstein, that the limits are things that you can't do at all, you can't even conceptualize. Which sort of limit, amongst those different sorts of limits, which sort of limit are you talking about?
Professor Biggs, following the procedure, I will answer in Russian, which they have to listen to you for your question. It is very accurate. It is related to the second chapter of my study, where I'm trying to find a solution to this problem in my thesis. Indeed, as my study shows, the term limits is very diverse in meaning, and that is why I looked, I found the special term semantic limits of law from the point of morality, some practical wisdom. If to answer your question exactly in this case, that is easier to explain it in terms of spatial method. When we see phenomena, virtual reality, when we see phenomena such as censorship, for example, applied to artwork, we run into some space which I would call, at least in Russian, as the space of senses, the realm of senses. And to continue with this metaphor, the law has split from the point of area, common interests, application of law stops where private life starts. This term is used quite often in contemporary world to explain personal data, privacy, but also there are some limits where application of law seems to be absurd. So my task was to identify legal collisions of application of law where it would be absurd from the point of lawyer, but would be hard to explain by your approaches, such as morality, philosophy. The limits I'm talking, explaining this limit in a different way, is when the starting point of a study where users in a virtual world, for example, games interact over some virtual object. What happens from the point of philosophy or social sciences? From that point, we reconstruct an artificial object of communication. The object exists because participants of this communication are communicating. And when one of such objects is absurd, and to explain such limits, I used the term semantic limits. Let me emphasize that in the Russian language, I think the term is even better. And so now I'm going to, in the Russian language, the term limits of law. This term is quite hard to translate into English. And not is a limit from the point of common sense. When we talk that here, it's absurd to use the law. In my speeches, I try to describe it's hard to describe fear, which does not include morality. I hope my answer makes sense. If you're satisfied with the translation, we were able to understand and explain my opinion. More questions from the Dissertation Council members? Yeah, we have no more questions. Let me, scientific consultant, Igor Yurevich, is with us now. Igor Yurevich, can you hear us now? Now we cannot hear Igor Yurevich anymore. Igor Yurevich, can you hear us? Yes, I can. Igor Yurevich can hear us. And Igor Yurevich, please be ready. The floor will be given to you later. Okay. Now, before members of the Dissertation Council present their reviews, we have to decide on the procedure how the degree applicant shall answer questions asked by the dissertation council members. We have two options. Vladislav Vladimirovich may answer each reviewer individually, or he can take all the questions in the end. I would recommend that all the members of the dissertation council present their reviews, and then the floor will be given to Vladimirovich, and he will answer all the questions at once. Is that okay with everybody? Do you agree? Okay, everybody, nobody minds. I agree. Thank you. And also, I have to draw your attention that we have the fact that we have one external review, and we will start the discussion of the thesis with this external review sent by Viktor Borisovich Toma, head of Russian practice for intellectual property, telecommunications of international legal firm Dentons, and the author also is a senior researcher of information law, International Institute of Russian Academy of Sciences, an expert of non-governmental union digital economy, a candidate of economical sciences, because since all the reviews have been published at the degree applicant's website page, let me focus on the key points. Viktor Borisovich emphasizes that is the author, an active lawyer, good command of intellectual property and information security. He emphasizes, he believes that the author found a way to set the problem and prove the method which goes outside information law, or goes beyond the limits of or civil law. And he also notices that, in his opinion, such industry studies are now, in a sense, in a dead end, and Vladislav Vladimirovich managed to found a method that gives to this research new life and new instruments. And also the author, Viktor Borisovich Naumov, emphasizes that the author found a way of interpreting law which can be used to determine situations as absurd and making sense. And this method can be applied. It's very operational, can be applied in practice. The concept presented by the author has have practical applications. As a strong point is the empirical base of the study, especially because it is based on personal involvement of Vladislav Vladimirovich in legal issues of the game industry, and in the end, this, he regrets that the science of information law will probably lose its agent, because Vladislav Vladimirovich is there are no critical remarks, and the opinion is highly positive. Dear members of the Dissertation Council, do you have any questions regarding this review. Thank you. Vladislav Vladimirovich. If you have no further questions, then we can proceed to speeches of the members of the Dissertation Council. And I would like to give the floor. So 2 questions were sent, but I shall read them later. We received 2 questions by email, and I shall read them after members of the Dissertation Council present their reviews and Vladislav Vladimirovich answers their questions. And now I would like to give the floor to Ginevra Igorevna Lukotskaya, Doctor of Legal Sciences, Professor of the Department of Theory of Law and State. Ginevra Igorevna, please share your impressions. Dear colleagues, even if we had not read, even if we had not heard the presentation by Vladislav Vladimirovich today, the very name, if we only knew the title of the thesis, even we could stop there if I talk about relevance. But because of the article, I have to very idea, the term itself used by Vladislav Vladimirovich, the very idea can be seen as a result of topical issues of modern digital life, of digital information world, not necessarily digital, and the issue of the semantic limits of law is especially relevant, becomes especially relevant in the digital era. The theoretical model of semantic limits suggested the interdisciplinary approach can be a start to formation of, let's say, one of the new programs of legal research. So this is evidenced by the initial conclusion of relevance of the thesis. Next, I have to say that if I follow the bureaucratic procedure, is degree of validity, which this degree of validity seems to be very high, and this is proven that the issue of semantic limits is studied with the help of interdisciplinary approach, synthesis of conclusions made by different research groups. And this research is conducted in the context philosophical and legal research related to the relationship between law and morality, systematic analysis of moral limits, philosophical and theoretical legal studies related to the problems of law interpretation, deontologic logic, semantics of legal text, theoretical and legal studies related to the doctrine of absurdity, humanitarian studies, research of the role of games in culture, modern interpretations of the concept of the magic circle in general, the research into analogies of law and game in philosophical and legal context, analysis of general and specific problems of development of various game technologies, studies of modern society characterized by the states of medial digital turn in the works of Russian and foreign scientists, theoretical and social studies focused on the problem of social significance of European remissions and social reconstructionalism. I don't want to tire you, and the source base includes works by authors I will not mention, that belong to these and other modern research groups. And all the foreign sources are used in the original. The empirical material is impressive, and they got special attention, alternative sources. Thus, validity becomes obvious, and relevance of conclusions, and the results have been tested many times. The novelty, first of all, in a nutshell, scientific novelty of the thesis is determined by the fact that the author identified the issue of semantic limits of law in the modern world. The concept of semantic limits of law is generalized in the legal sense, and the whole complex of relevant theoretical and practical issues, virtual reality, dichotomy, absurdity, common sense, etc. Secondly, the author tried and succeeded to rethink a whole set of theories, mostly related to interpretation of law in the conditions of medial turn, and he managed to give the issues connected with gaming and digital aspects of social interaction the theoretical sense by putting them in the discourse of contemporary legal theory. And finally, it's also noteworthy the idea of the author that the problems of the magic circle. This term is quite well known in the cultural studies, in the prism of legal studies, should be or could be considered as problems of application of law and interpretation of legal texts, which are directly related to absurdity in law. Such question enabled the author to go beyond the narrow legal problems to the true genuine absurdity. Genuine absurdity in doesn't mean, and not some contradictions of legal interpretation to morality, but the application of positive law to relations, the object of which has no social significance. And finally, obvious heuristic value for the law and for sociology of law is the methodology proposed by the author based on the application of reality criterion, which Vladislav described in his presentation. Reality, which implies a formal assessment of a relationship in terms of reality, and the criterion of seriousness, which implies assessment of the subject in terms of what the dissertation calls invertible social currency. This approach, this is one of the good examples of multidisciplinary approach. Thus, the thesis has scientific novelty, validity, obvious theoretical and practical significance. And very few critical remarks that I have. First, my first question is about the type of understanding of law. But on page 358, the author defines his position. as we can also deduce from the presentation, as supporter of inclusive positivism, socially inclusive positivism. Dear members, so many theories of natural law, we cannot miss that, and we cannot leave it unattended. But this is said only in the end of the thesis, but in the beginning of the thesis, when he defines law, refers to the methodology of analytical jurisprudence, interpretation of Hart's interpretation of the term. So also in the so how this methodological understanding of Hart. Second question about absurdity, contradiction to morality. On the one hand, the thesis, moral discourse is not enough for moral justification of absurdity of specific cases of interpretation or application of law. What is the conclusion? That the author believes that absurdity does not necessarily mean such fundamental contradiction to morality. The result should not be seen as a criteria of true absurdity. On the other hand, Vladislav Vladimirovich refers to the article that contradicts social values. So, obvious contradiction to morality is, does that mean absurdity or not? Of course, these remarks are only points for discussion. They don't affect the overall positive opinion of the thesis, and hopefully the author will continue to work hard on this theme, the wide range of issues in theory and methodology of law, and with pleasure. I would like to read the thesis by Vladimirovich Arkhipov on semantic limits of law in the context of medial term, theoretical and legal interpretation, corresponds to the requirements, and the author deserves to be awarded the degree of Doctor of Legal Sciences, specialty, etc. Thank you, Ginevra Igorevna. I would like to give the floor to Ilya Lvovich Chesnov. Ilya Lvovich, please, the floor is yours. Dear Chairman, dear members of the dissertation, ladies and gentlemen, the thesis by Vladimirovich Arkhipov, certainly New World, legal, in national theory of law. Indeed, well described the context of postmodern epoch era, medial term, which is discussed by philosophers, but not so much by lawyers, not given enough attention to this serious, and also semantics of law, semantic limits of law. I'd like to say that there are some works dedicated to the semantics of law, maybe semiotics of law in Russia, including, for example, Nafateva wrote well about this. Vladimirovich Ulyanov. It's interesting that an interesting concept of criminality suggested by Arkhipov is very well known as University Semantic theory of personality. But of course, this is not what Vladislav Vladimirovich is talking about in his thesis. And here he's the first one to analyze semantic limits of law. In the work describes very well such serious concept as a limit of interference of the state, human rights, limits of personal freedom, freedom of expression, state sovereignty, and a new meaning of digitalization, semantic limits, extremist expressions, abusive expression, etc. So they have not only theoretical but undoubtedly practical relevance and organic combination of philosophy of law, rich empirical material is characteristic of this work. Original idea is the claim that in the information era, social practices that can be described as gaming practices, game of law. And of course, he's not the first one to pay attention to this, but a good nation of the gaming analogy is the clearly an advantage of the work. One of the concepts is this information noise, which emerges, which occurs because of excessive information and the ability to understand. And by the way, prominent scientist, Mikhail Epstein, their society was already faces challenges of information overload. So the government has to deal with this. The governments have to deal with these challenges already. So generally, in my opinion, theoretical visions aimed at solution scientific problem with importance and significance. All that means that shows relevance of the theme of its scientific novelty, theoretical and practical significance. And I'll finish the positive part here and proceed to some points for this discussion. Because the work is very complex, the work deserves careful, read carefully, so the points for are certainly there. First, the author both the concept of sufficient criteria, semantic limits of law, which will be used as general criteria. So he mentioned that already. This, seriousness and reality in social relations. This term shall be seen as concept of functional conformity of the applicative reality and the central meaning of the notion used in the legal text, as well as on the basis of the theoretical principle of legal semantics and the notion of generalized reading. Other examples of the concept limits of law based on theoretical modeling. Author admits the description of the central meaning of the term law based on common sense. However, after the pragmatic turn, including in the analytic philosophy, Wittgenstein Meaning is determined not by reference to reality, and not by establishing the functional correspondence of media reality, family resemblance between meanings. That is the use of central meaning of the term of law based on the common sense. On page 76, 77, reality, as shown, is constructed on page 8. However, my question is, who constructs the law and how? To me, that seems to be a crucial issue that has been overlooked by Paul. Second, the author writes, inclusion of simulation of the media space in the field of law is a special case of absurdity, not senselessness in the application and interpretation of law. If absurdity reflects the fundamental contradiction of common sense, the implicit rationality of law. This raises a question. What is the relationship between simulacra and legal fiction? I believe that the work would have benefited if the author had developed this, explored this problem. The author writes, presence of generally accepted and is binding rules, one of the basic features of law, even if they are implicit or differ from those formally declared, is an empirical of the social reality. Separate legal text or other legal phenomenon, the simulacrum is possible, but the law is called not. Thus, the law is not simulacrum, but simulacrums can be included in the realm of law unless the simulacrum itself serves as a social significant object of relations. However, that raises the question: who and how defines, classifies, and qualifies simulacrum, and the lack of it in the legal reality? Is it sufficient for the determination of rationality understood as the implicit rationality of law, simulated by the subject of legal activity, who has undergone professional socialization under the conditions of the given legal order? Who and how gives the analytical definition of the central meaning of the notions used in the legal text for subsequent use as a reference to check the functional adequacy, reality of the revealed subject of public relations? Its limit confine oneself to pointing out the role of meaning or symbolic medium in the spirit of Parsons, the construction of social reality. In my opinion, this is not, and for equality, we read found in media objects and virtual reality interpreted in the context of research, simulation, or imitation. However, the author further makes the counterposition of the right media reality. Based on both the positions of analytical jurisprudence and common sense, we can assume that objective law is by definition impossible as simulacrum. If if something in a society has external features of law, but is the simulacrum, there's no right in it in such a society. Because even they are different from a formal, having social factor or social reality. The separate legal text or other legal phenomena is possible, but the law as a whole is not. Thus, the law is not similar, so that cannot be included in reality. So, unless I beg your pardon, if law or legal reality is an element of social reality, and the latter is defined as virtual, simulated reality, logically assume that law is also the essence of. Otherwise, one should either distinguish between materiality and virtual social reality. Nevertheless, this points not influence the overall conclusion that the thesis by Arkhipov is a valuable theoretical and legal study. Of which obvious theoretical professions can be qualified as scientific achievement in the field of law theory and meets the basic requirements established by the order rector of St. Petersburg University and the degree applicant, Vladislav Vladimirovich, certainly deserves to be awarded the degree of Doctor of Legal Sciences, specialty 120001. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Vladimirovich, for your review. And let us continue our discussion. Let me give the floor to Professor Bix. Professor Bix, welcome.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, members of the Thesis Council. I'm honored to be here. Thank you very much for your hospitality. I have read the thesis, Semantic Limits of Law and the Condition of the Medial Turn, in its English translation. I'm now ready to offer some comments. The thesis offers an innovative introduction to the problem of considering the difficulties raised by the actual or potential application of legal rules to the media space in general and multi-person online games in particular. Such applications have led courts and commentators to invoke the principle that legal rules will not be applied to according to their literal meaning if the application would seem absurd. The thesis goes on to focus on the absurdity exception, noting that absurdity is often not clearly defined. Sometimes what is meant is an outcome that appears immoral. More apt, more appropriate for the application of legal rules to multiplayer online games is the standard of common sense. And this initially unformed standard is what distinguishes appropriate from inappropriate applications of the criminal and civil laws to what happens in the course of games. The thesis goes on to explore these ideas through the lens of the views of Lon Fuller and H.L.A. Hart, including Fuller's inner morality of law and Hart's distinction between core and penumbra, and the helpful concept of the central idea of the semantic limits of law. The discussion also introduces concepts that will become important: magic circle and generalized symbolic media. The discussion in the thesis then turns to the application of legal rules to online games in view of the level of seriousness and the potential subject of legal relations. This is explored in terms of socio-currency value. Objects which have socio-currency value are serious. Those with no social currency value are of a fantasy nature. The discussion concludes by suggesting that perhaps there should be a ninth principle of legality to add to Lon Fuller's famous listing of 8. And in parallel to Robert Alexi's well-known conclusion that law necessarily claims correctness, the thesis argues persuasively that the law also claims seriousness. The work is thoroughly grounded in scholarship and contains a comprehensive bibliography. The thesis does an excellent job of exploring the boundaries between the serious and the non-serious, between common sense and the absurd, and applying legal norms to multiplayer, online, and other games. As discussed in the work, this is partly a function of consent, both the stated and unstated, but generally understood rules of the game. The thesis is valuable in bringing in the idea of Talcott, Parsons, and related social theorists. There are concepts of generalized social media and external referent of value to explain and prescribe possible boundary lines. The author nicely explores where the idea of magic circle is useful in the present analysis and what its limits might be. At one extreme, it is clear that no one should be charged with murder for the killing of a character as part of an online fantasy game. And the same would generally be true about applying laws about theft to taking fantasy treasure in an online game. However, if the treasure was initially created because of the payment of real-world money, and it was taken by another player or made to disappear by an organizer, contrary to the rules of the game, it becomes at least debatable whether conventional legal rules about theft might apply, as the thesis points out. The thesis properly points out that the question of the application of rules to multiplayer online games is not different in nature from questions about the application of legal or indeed moral norms to other and older imagined worlds, including those of novels, plays, and cartoons. For example, how to apply rules against blasphemy, pornography, or sedition when the acts or statements in question occur in fictional works. The media turn does raise some truly novel-specific issues, but as the author shows, many of these basic questions have been discussed by scholars in the past. I want to raise one additional minor concern. The work might have questioned more closely the connection between purpose and text and interpretation and in the absurdity standard. The thesis gives examples from Lon Fuller's work, The Anatomy of Law, arguments that a murderer should not be punished because the victim believed he was going to heaven, or that an embezzler should not be punished because the redistribution of wealth would increase overall happiness. These are instances where the ultimate purpose, whether happiness or welfare, is proposed to take precedence over textual meaning. That is clearly unacceptable. And it's thus worth asking, is there a formula for understanding how high or how general a purpose can be and still be considered in potentially overriding the application of textual meaning? Overall, the dissertation is a completed and independent executed scientific research. It presents new ideas and will be of interest to scholars and policymakers. As the dissertation meets the basic requirements established by Order number 6821/1, the candidate deserves the award of scientific degree, candidate of Doctor of Legal Sciences in the specialty 12.00.01, Theory and History of Law and State, History of the Teachings of Law and State. Thank you.
Dear Professor Biggs, thank you for your review. And I would like to give the floor to Nikolai Viktorovich Razovaya. Nikolai Viktorovich, welcome. Thank you. I will join the opinions of my colleagues expressed earlier that the thesis by Vladislav Vladimirovich Arkhipov is definitely relevant from the scientific and practical sense. The scientific relevance of the thesis is obvious, especially in the situation of post-classical turn, which revealed problems, the very or features of law in the modern world, which is going through significant changes, and the practical relevance, the fact that the medial turn, the digital different spheres of social life, the different relations in the society that we are observing, and because law has impact on the society, political processes, the digitalization, which became a significant trend, leads to significant changes in law, which require careful exploration, and the use of technology and discussion is very helpful to understand. And of course, the theory of law cannot stay away from these discussions. So the research of Vladislav Vladimirovich makes a significant contribution to the study of semantic limits of law. And relations of law. The special significance of the thesis has in its complex nature, the theoretical provisions describe the empirical material, and as has already been mentioned, the interdisciplinary nature, the thesis, and So here, the on philosophical, anthropological teachings mentioned by the author add depth and originality to the study of legal issues raised by the questions asked by the author. And it seems to me is attractive is the methodological approach of the author, who in the source base that he used the approach the synthesis is forms the nucleus after classical study is in phenomenological philosophy of law of the in the continental legal study. So this synthesis is very relevant, and might have said that analytical philosophy and phenomenological philosophy have a common source, which is the logical concept from which these two traditions emerge. And today, of course, many things have changed, and but preserving these two traditions, phenomenological and analytical, in the theory of law, enables us to say that there is a possibility to create some universal theoretical synthesis that will become basis for further research and will be a prerequisite for integral law, understanding of the integral law, and for a long time been tasked with researchers, novelty and practical significance of the thesis of provisions put for defense is beyond any doubt. It's very promising, the description of this provision introduced the medial turn, post-classical turn, semantic, which corresponds with post-non-classical turn, and will add legal reality. So there are all reasons because of the medial turn of the ways of reconstruction reality, and is applied to virtual reality, traditional instruments, legal norms, subjective legal duty seem to be insufficient here for the purpose. And this, the author is simulation of various objects, social reality in general, the special significance of simulation or discourse in provision 3, semantic aspect of interpretation of legal text is the criteria of seriousness in the context of correspondence of reality to simulacrum and explication of sense of this concept, as well as the concept of magic circle as another provision, good for defense, the relevance of which is causes no doubt. And the basis of methodological prerequisites, the degree applicant formulates the key criteria of truth, is relevance. The most important criteria of these are reality, which is a functional correspondence with the meaning of the concept, is and the criterion of seriousness that light from the medium on page 57. The structure includes 3 chapters. The first chapter contains analysis of factual material, different types of different problems, consideration problems. Knowledge and your pardon. Since the review has been published on the website, can you focus on the key points? Then let me focus on the. So the key points are which seemed controversial to me. Certain contradictions which the author has mentioned. On page 286, Vladislav Vladimirovich says that criteria of is a quality of, is a kind of fundamental to communication is always real, and it depends on, and at the same time the author believes that the object should be searched for intersubjective communication skills measurement. So it seems to me that a certain vicious circle starts a legal discourse, including interpretation, and narrate, navigate on the reality. Second point, which statement that the right is a zero result, is where one party wins, inevitably means the other party loses. But the difference is from real politics is that while in the game determined by law, there are no losers, is no non-zero essence. And the third point, where I'd like to stop, is internal morality of law. I think to a degree there is a contradiction in this. The author talks about semantic limits, which delineate law from morality. But at the same time, I think that this is, in the epistemological sense, it reduces the effect of regulation in the ontological and in moral judgments. Okay. So these are my critical comments, and I think that they do not reduce the overall positive impression and value of the thesis. And the thesis by Vladislav Vladimirovich Arkhipov corresponds to the basic requirement set by the order of the 1st of September 2016 on the order of awarding academic degrees in St. Petersburg University, and the degree applicant deserves to be awarded the degree of Doctor of Legal Sciences, specialty file 0001, theory and history of law and state, history of the legal and political teachings. Thank you. Thank you, Nikolai Vladimirovich, dear colleagues, dear Vladimirovich. Our session has been going for 2 hours, and I suggest we take a short technical break for 7 minutes. Is that okay for everybody? Technical break for 7 minutes.
Да, все готово, можно продолжать.
Мгм, хорошо. Уважаемые члены диссертационного совета, уважаемые коллеги, мы возобновляем трансляцию заседания нашего диссертационного совета. Ну и теперь предстоит выступить с отзывом мне. Конечно, я согласна с уже высказанными мнениями относительно многочисленных положительных сторон той диссертации, которую мы сегодня рассматриваем. Я бы сказала, что вообще говоря, это редкая работа. И то, о чем говорил сегодня и Илья Львович, и Женевра Игоревна, действительно это соединение высокой теории и актуальной практики. Я, безусловно, соглашусь с тем, что говорила Женевра Игоревна, в том отношении, что диссертация Владислава Владимировича фундирована источниками из разнообразных областей знания, и, конечно же, юриспруденции, и философии, и логики, и социологии. В своем отзыве я имела возможность отметить высокую эстетику научного текста, с которым мы знакомились.
Елена Владимировна, я прошу прощения, технический перерыв объявите.
To take a technical break. Dear colleagues, we have to take a technical break. Take a technical break. For 5 minutes, we need to take a technical break for 5 minutes.
приближается до
If we may continue. Let us continue.
Так, уважаемые коллеги,
Dear colleagues, let us resume
заседание нашего
broadcasting of the session about this session. I interrupted on a high note. Well, to get back where I was. In the thesis, there's an interesting intrigue in the thesis that starts in the introduction in chapter 1 and then evolves throughout chapter 2 and chapter 3 and keeps the reader interested until the very end of the thesis. And all the set, all the questions asked by the degree applicant to all these questions. Vladislav Vladimirovich is giving answers. And today, as was mentioned, relevance was mentioned many times, relevance of the thesis, and the very presence of the phrase semantic limits in the condition of medial turn can ensure relevance to any research, but I'd like to draw your attention to relevance, which is maybe a little less obvious. And I see that interesting examples from legal practice. Vladislav Vladimirovich discusses fundamental issues of legal philosophy of law and of freedom, which on the one hand is protected by the law and on the other hand is limited by the law. I will not repeat what is written in my review, my official review about scientific novelty, validity, and all those perfect characteristics. The thesis, by no doubt, possesses them all, and because the subject of our session is discussion. Discussion starts when there are questions. So I will proceed straight to questions, but let me emphasize that my considerations, they are of critical nature, but rather points for discussion, because issues discussed by Vladislav Vladimirovich, they can have they may have different solutions. My first consideration is about the delineation of virtual and real. I think this is somewhat unclear. On the one hand, Vladislav Vladimirovich says that virtual poses reality, but then reality is something imagined, something serious, something fiction, and even virtual. This reality is defined instrumentally. Virtual reality is different from reality. It has the property of imitation simulation. So it seems clear, but at the same time, Vladimirovich emphasizes how conventional this delineation is, that so maybe it's so thin, the boundary is so thin, because social constructivism, from position of social constructivism, and emphasized by this, that all virtual is real, and vice versa. So this reconstruction, semantic reconstruction, limits of law, explained in the thesis, is supposes, requires setting the clear boundary between virtual and real. What is virtual, what is real, and correspondence with which shall be recognized as virtual. And Vladislav Vladimirovich says that the most interesting collisions are where the real world collides with the virtual world. And the way to solve these collisions, the concept of semantic limit of law developed by the author, if the concept of real and virtual are equivalent, then there could be no collision between the two. And how can we differentiate virtual from real for the purpose of law? And maybe the position of Vladislav Vladimirovich could be more concise on this, explicit. The difference between virtual and real could be more better defined. And Vladimirovich uses an interesting term. And of course, I don't mean reality in the sense of rough empirical reality. Here, I mean, I would support question asked by Ilya, which the thesis touches upon an interesting phenomenon of imitation or simulation. And in the gaming situations, a lawyer cannot respond to this as if, because as if is
Спасибо.
as if one is something else, is necessary to define legal fiction. And I use the term, I use the way fiction belongs to real. So this takes us back to the delineation of virtual and real, how real law. And maybe the issue of reality could be discussed together with the concept of reference, type of reality, type of reference, using wide concept, broad concept of reference, Lexus meaning only grammatical incorrect expressions. My second consideration is connected with metaphor used in the thesis. The metaphor of law is a game or with the claim for serious. I do not doubt the discourse of law in a game, and I compliment Vladimirovich good humor, who says the law is similar to deadly serious game, but what happens following certain rules. Indeed, Vladislav Vladimirovich uses the concept of family resemblance, more useful for analysis of conventional language and can be harmful for language or science. And in our case, it is our life is nothing but a game. I'm not against this, but I think that here there's some consideration, maybe some contradiction. It seems to me, on one hand, not serious. Game is not a serious object. Law is real and serious. But on the other hand, Vladislav Vladimirovich says that this serious is not a key feature of the game, and of course here there's a question: game and law, is it serious or not? Okay, forget that the concept of the game is ambivalent. It's serious and not serious at the same time. Then what about the relevance of this dichotomy? And that means then the limits become very vague, because these limits are preserved only when the limits of the magic circle made are clear and definite. And Vladislav Vladimirovich, in this sense, criticizes Huizinga, and I think his criteria, if it is in a moral sense, cannot be a game. So this criteria, seems to me, stays relevant and cannot be denied, rejected. But if these limits of the magic circle are not clearly defined, then it's hard to even identify this dichotomy in the use of the magic circle. So this again takes us back to the differentiation of real and virtual. The game is a part of virtual reality, and law is not virtual reality, and is imitation, is a typical of vague limits, real and virtual. Then the fiction, imitation turns into what Vladislav Vladimirovich calls gaming media reality. So I think that real law can be serious. As it's a question of attitude. And simulation is not an essential feature of the game. If we talk about professional sports, for example. So here's my question about the correspondence of morality and law, which was asked by Jennifer Igrina. Why only law makes a claim to seriousness? This claim is this a distinctive feature of the law, a phenomenon that makes claim to correctness, morality, not considered to be a generalized symbolic medium. Why not? Game doesn't have this claim to correctness. If the law is a deadly serious game, how is this deadly serious game different from other deadly serious games. As an example, such as Russian roulette, we compare norms to rules to legal norms. So this seriousness maybe can make a claim to correctness without a claim to seriousness. And one more consideration is constructed with a concept of generalized symbolic media, the seriousness of the subject of regulation, non-absurd application of law, and on the one hand, there's many times that it's symbolic media is the paradigm, and then on the other hand causes money, classical symbolic media, and emphasizes this convertibility of these symbolic media. So, and then this takes us that it's serious because it costs money, and in the end, money, this convertibility, power, help us to make this limit. Make this. So I hope that Vladimirovich will agree that game can be serious when it is about money and influence. Can be serious at the same time. So these then that raises a question: institutional realm of law, such generalized symbolic medium justice. The examples, practical examples in your thesis. Is it not possible to explain these examples to apply this symbolic medium that, according to Abrutin's explanation? And my final consideration is about the interpretation of the example of Article 105 of the Criminal Code, which of the Russian legal criminal code. Is Vladislav Vladimirovich. The question is it possible to qualify murder of a character in computer games as homicide under Article 105 the Criminal Code of Russia? And Vladislav Vladimirovich gives different explanations from the point of different approaches, and answers question by saying that murdering a character in a computer game is not homicide from the point of Article 105, because killing it has no social significance. But this raises a question. And homicide, killing a man, a living man, does it have social value? The explanation seems to be too complicated, as in comparison with such an obvious explanation that does not require a complex procedure. Doesn't need, where you don't need to identify a subject and object, because a character in a computer game is a subject of law, and destruction of a character cannot be tried as murder. It seems to me excessive, but I think that does not exclude efficiency of the methodology in less obvious situations, which we are much more common. And here also one gets a question if you get bonus points for murder and get money, what does that mean? That will have a social currency monetary value? Obviously, no. And finally, final point connected with the same example, criteria of functional correspondence. Maybe maybe I did not understand the author correctly, but explaining functional correspondence, Vladislav Vladimirovich says that if something explains this correspondence, for example, if something acts as property, that means it is property. Now that means if it corresponds to other criteria, we classify differently. And Vladislav Vladimirovich emphasizes that this example with property can be applied to other external value reference. And if we continue this discussion, if we try to apply this example to the example with Article 105, homicide. If a person, if a character in a computer game acts as a murderer, that means he's a murderer. It's a virtual murder. Should be qualified as vicious actors. But I suppose that I could, my conclusion could be wrong, and Vladislav Vladimirovich certainly will explain this to us. And in conclusion, I would like to say that Vladislav Vladimirovich managed his work very skillfully to unite who he's been working on during his career, interpretation of law, interest to the history of law, and Lon Fuller, the concept of heart, this issue connected with methodology, and the fact that information, this probably his personal experience and his personal interest with information technology. He managed to put everything together in an interesting way. I think that Vladislav Vladimirovich managed to touch upon very interesting issues and take them to a new theoretical level. And he suggested new cutting-edge solutions. So my considerations, they do not diminish anything at all. And my conclusion is that the thesis by Vladislav Vladimirovich Arkhipov fully corresponds to the requirements applied to thesis, and Vladislav Vladimirovich deserves to be awarded the degree of Doctor of Legal Sciences in a given specialty. And thus, all the members of the Dissertation Council have presented their reviews. Now the floor is given to the degree applicants to answer questions and remarks made by the Dissertation Council members. The floor is given to Vladislav Vladimirovich. Dear Elena Vladimirovna, dear council members, thank you for giving the floor to me, and thank you for your time and attention you've given to my work. And now, let me. I am very grateful because you have touched upon important issues regarding education of business, and I'm very tempted to give detailed answers, but my understanding is that I have to stick to the time limits. So I will try to be very concise, though the questions are very interesting. With your permission, I will start in the order that corresponds to the logical. I will start with the more specific questions. By specific, I mean these are questions virtual and real questions related with law in general, concept of system of theoretical in the legal science. So if you don't, if the chairman, if there are members of the objections, I will start with the questions asked by Elena Vladimirovna. If no one has any objections to that, I will start the first comment, which was asked by Elena Vladimirovna and Ilya Lvovich Chestov, question about virtual and real and the opposition. So on the one hand, they are in opposition, and on the other hand, they are not. I agree that for aesthetic reasons, I used several sentences of the word, several meanings of the word virtual, and this happened how the question was appeared in the discourses too, because virtual and real is an opposition, a concept, antonyms. Now the concept from the dominated from the point of game studies is different between virtual and real is vanishing, and in that sense, this aspect. But in general, the aim of my work was to reinvent the concept of virtual for the purpose of for the legal use, and as a result, it should be obvious in my work that the previous definition of virtual required also criticism. Virtual here in the context is that doesn't have social monetary is additional funds to develop new for the legal side to develop a new criterion of virtuality. Legal here, I use the hypothesis that virtual real should be considered absurdity because there is no difference between absurdity and reality. I'm making it like in the world of fantasy surrounded by reality. That law should not allow this. And to proceed to the question about legal functions by Elena Vladimirovna and Ilya Lvovich, I have to say that, of course, definitely, this is a good question. The very phrase "as if" hints at Heikinger as if philosophy, and Fuller also theoretical fictions spoke about this approach, but to answer shortly, the question is similar to the question I will answer very soon about who creates law and what is law, and because in the concept of generalized symbolic media routine, and something is is assumed to be a legal fiction. Because legal fiction has the social monetary value, and independent symbolic meaning. A routine has 10 of those, and a routine says that there could be more because they communicate certain which is universal. For the concept of Alexis Minor, I think it is very interesting, and I have a very good opinion of because the approach of Minor depends on objects that do not in reality, at least in my opinion, can be connected with ideas of virtual reality and ideas of objects that are defined by subjects of war communication. But in that sense, the logic is does not allow us how significant is it in social communication. But because logic is in principle, maybe that's a very strong statement, but it have to be careful because there are many different concepts in main they allow to answer the question if this such object is relevant for law, and the answer can be it's comparable, but in my opinion, it's not. It's same as the question of the term game is used in various senses, and that was a big test for me to develop a system, imaginary, virtual, gaming in a language because as for a metaphor of family resemblance and the criticism of use of this metaphor is within way I see that however until the aim of theory the term family resemblance is used some fragments of the philosophical studies, and this is not enough for formal clarity required by the law. So I try family resemblance to use functional correspondence, symbolic media, and this way, this application in the values in object of relation can be the definition of the term in the word itself, the text, and this is the fundamental issue that is really important at this stage. It is not, it has been solved, but very interesting that it can be used to show the included in the syllogism, and the interpreters later describe positivists. So this is not a question of jurisprudence. It's not a preference for jurisprudence, but this is a problem of that lawyers have to deal with when applying the law. And as for game, not to avoid comparing law and game is a byproduct of my thesis. That's not fundamental. I try to explain the law has certain features of a game, and depends on which games we, for example, game of imagination, so they are quite different. And on the basis of this, in some cases, the law is not similar to a game. If you look at game theory, practice of social interaction, following social rules in that context. So here, I think we're talking about many senses of the same word, and on the basis of this principle, I would solve this problem mentioned by and claim to seriousness as a feature of the law. Here, I like to say that maybe if this is not clear from the thesis, this is a good comment, a valid comment, but of course the question is not good. But what I wanted to say, the meaning I wanted to show is claim to seriousness is not the only differentiating feature of the law. It is one of the differentiating features of the law, and following the same methodological approach, not in the same sense of pragmatics, but in the sense of pragmatic as something about to the turn. In this case, the law should have this claim to seriousness. The question is a question of terminology, and I think that the law would have such a claim, and this is obvious from my morality. I think the morality in general, not symbolic, is not a generalized symbolic idea, concept that to which we are used in jurisprudence, both continental American legal traditions, morality in general. The approach is clear. Morality is a system of values, etc. This approach is a different model from the model of general symbolic media. And several similar symbolic media connected with morality and such as religion. But this is similar to how Fuller generalized social order. But I would say that these are different models, but same. So here I don't see significant here. As for money as a symbolic medium, I was very scared of this remark because it's is a wrong moral right, because there's a popular moral belief that money is evil. I don't think that money is evil, and general symbolic medium. I would phrase it differently. In my thesis, the fear of economy and scientific knowledge with all is one of the most well studied compared to other spheres that study other generalized symbolic medium. For example, let's take here economic anthropology. You ask questions of different economy, which in some society exists, which is not is the economy of gift is different from the economy of money, but in the knowledge of routing, one of the systems of the different system domain, which has its own generalized symbolic meaning. So here, I think the question is it can be resolved. I'm not talking money is the main medium, but we live in a society lately where money is one of the most developed generalized symbolic medium. And about interpretation, the example with the mother, I accept that maybe this is a very complex way of explaining, but the character in the game is not just exactly because in this case we don't have social monetary value. Because we don't have too much time, I will not expand on this too much, but for exactly further in I'm sorry, maybe my remark there is no communication. In multi-user games, of course, this object is also, for example, so then in the case murder of a character is simplified. There will be monetary values and concept actually there is monetary value, but it's not connected with or life, it is connected with money. So this is my answer to this comment. Therefore, let me proceed to comments made by Ginevra Igorevna. As for the law and the starting point, the definition, I use the parts approach exactly because it retains connection with theory, where the British lawyer said that there will be still discussions about what law, even though among theoreticians, the question of what medicine is not discussed at all. Well, because anyone can answer what is included in the law and what is connected with the concept of law. So that's we gave different wording to this idea in my thesis. In Petersburg School of Philosophy, and I naturally use the texts about integral understanding of law. Law is a term that means a big sphere of social practices, to facts, ideas, relations, legal text. And in my personal opinion, I think this is important. So I shall also say that it's like classical types of understanding law, the positivism and the idealism and the discussion, the both norms and emotions. This so if someone feels emotion from the point of concept of symbolic media, this social monetary value is totally present here. And to answer, to finish answering this question, my integral to the law and the starting point, the question of interpretation of legal text, and is no one denies existence of the text, and that's my mentioned parts. Second, about the calculation of morality, I think can be seen as an example of absurdity, not the absurdity on which research focuses. Indeed, outrageous punishment can be, but the term absurdity is here used in a different sense. And my sense is trying to use speak the language of modern philosophy. As here, I can say that absurdity means there's a gap between with cause and effects of the state world. And so here I'm getting back to the concept. And now about the question of Professor Wicks, how the example with Fuller to correspond with my concept and the aspect of the question. If there is a formula to understand how general or purpose should be, to step away from literal application, so the textual meaning used by heroes in the Fuller's example, close relative who should be rewarded because this relative believed in life, And this here actually I like to assume that in this case, this question is seen from two different points. Now the relation to contextual relation, in my opinion, is the right setting, but it is in a different paradigm, and the paradigm from known and well studied by Professor Vladislav on interpretation of the law of foreign authors, etc. In my thesis, I think one may create a different explanation. I shall focus a little bit on this. My explanation is that there is certain gap between generalized symbolic medium that corresponds to the central meaning of the word used in this hypothetical and the generalized symbolic medium, each through his active in fullest example. Here, absurdity is created, and in other words, the question can be where these limits of law are, and are they in the domain of language, or are they in the domain the semantic limits of law? They are on the between the connection of words, language, and then structural properties and the world. Here I use the term semantics, which answering the question of Vladimirovich. I will not use the term pragmatics, though it would be a natural from the point of linguistics at least, because semantics in this case is how it would be in the case of law. And next, I think it would be logical to answer questions. I almost because similar. I'd like to answer questions by Nikolai Viktorovich Radbaev about, first of all, the question that is communication real and the reality of certain objects. The question is similar to the first question about virtual and real, and the answer will be quite similar. Virtual is the concept of conceptual limit law enables us to define false apple, and it brings together the value of an object, which in the text of legal norm, a particular word, and in this sense, using the same metaphor from the thesis, is no longer a circle, but each time it looks like a picture of is not a circle, but kind of a zigzag where you connect the points. This game. And a second question about this language game. Here, yes, I have to apologize to the reader because this is solely a wrong metaphor. And here I would like to explain that because I have limited time, that this is a metaphor. I have no claims to the fundamental conclusions, and it's not connected with the main idea of the thesis. Next, the review by Vladimirovich, and I understand maybe it was a mistake to save them to the end because they call for more the longest, the biggest discussion, and I will try to answer them as short as possible. The first comment, who and how construct the law, and so here I would like to say that in general, because as was mentioned earlier, in my work, social constructivism, I rely on methodology, Merger and Luke, which are used in some works of Petersburg philosophy of law. I think that the concept is still relevant and is law is a product of subjective, objective, constructed by the society as a whole. And if we put here, we use Fuller's methodology used in his works, maybe not because of the time he was open for the discussion of Fuller and Huck is coming to the end. So this here I'm going to the metaphor. The direction by Rudolf von Hering is here. So this is the answer. And the real in law, and answer in another important comment by Vladimirovich. Media reality. I meant that it has reality, but sometimes simulation as well. And the term is not a success, it's a simulator, it's not a good term. And what I mean is that it will occur, and the law has this value, which manifests itself in justice, then it becomes real. And in the article written after the thesis was submitted for defense, law can correspond, and I try to touch upon this issue in my article and discuss how it should act and corresponds to justice. Then in this suggestion, certain accumulation of social capital can be converted into power in the sense of strengthening this mediator is one of the examples which hopefully can make with a metaphor answer the question connected with the question. To answer the question about who defines, who classifies simulacrum or lack of legal reality, in my thesis I touched upon this. My thesis, who determines is not that important, because the concept suggested in my thesis is a kind of an instrument that can be used. This is connected with the idea, because the last question about the legal fictions. So I will just give only one observation here, that it's maybe not convincing. The observation is as follows. The interpretation of law rules are similar to implicit legal norms. And one of the ideas of my thesis is that if assume if there is no serious, then the legal system will be destroyed, because it corresponds to absurdity. Because of absurdity, with your permission, I will finish this answering in comments. It's up to respected chairman, distinguished members of the Dissertation Council, if you are satisfied with my answers. I thank you, Vladislav Vladimirovich, for your answers. Dear colleagues, dear members of the Dissertation Council, is everybody satisfied with the answers given by Vladislav Vladimirovich? I'm fully satisfied. Nikolai Viktorovich, yes, I'm quite satisfied.
Yes.
I see that Ilya Lvovich and Professor Briggs are satisfied. So is everybody satisfied? Then we received 5 questions. and I shall read questions to Vladislav Vladimirovich in the same order as we received them. The first question to the first year student at School of Law, St. Petersburg University, Vladimirovich. His question is, judging from the semantic limits of law, is it possible, in your opinion, to talk about artificial intelligence having becoming a subject of law? So it would be, for example, in the sphere of intellectual property. This is the first question. The procedure, you will answer all questions after I read all of them. Second question. Second question is asked by Vladimirovich, candidate of political science, assistant professor of St. Petersburg University. Vladimirovich asking what threats to development of economic processes the digital space is in the internet, how this practice can affect legal regulation of digital space. And the third question is quite lost. It did not fit a chat box. Let me get into my mailbox, read it. Question sent by Violeta Maksudovna, candidate of biological sciences, unemployed. The question is as follows. Violeta Maksudovna would like to the author's opinion on how your theoretical concept can be used to apply to a particular situation. This is a new media phenomenon, virtual community connected with the personality of a real person, a real living individual. Violeta Maksudovna, given the person, I shall not name him here. I don't think there is a need to do so. This person is a resident of Yakutsk, and in virtual world he's called Sasha the Shaman, and so I will use his nickname. His religious practices, society became, and his absent games drew attention of the law enforcement agencies. Okay. No voice. About the popularity of and recently the police declared him a threat to the society. In this case, so-called law enforcement agencies and this virtual community on Facebook, the community is called Someone is Coming. Can this case be defined as absurdity of application of law? So-called law enforcement agents, and they have no common sense. Do you see any legal conflicts in this and his virtual colleagues? And in addition to the main question, there's no. Can actions of law enforcement a metaphor shown in your slides can be applied to actions of law enforcement agents in Ukraine? And the next question sent by the student Maxim Petrovich Bayevsky, first-year student of St. Petersburg University, bachelor's program of management and jurisprudence. And the thesis, imitation of game in the mixes and illustration corresponding to seriousness as robbery with the help of real weapons. And using this example, the author shows certain doubt. The main subject is money, not weapons. And the author emphasizes the on page 396 analysis of one norm. There is a violence. It seems that is priority of the state policy and the positive could also be insufficient. The author observes proved insufficient moral criteria. Using on the basis of this, maybe this methodology insufficient. Determine the answer is yes. I have a question. The concept of object of law, the construction of which would be used the concept of general or symbolic medium. And there is one more question. Last question from a student of third-year student in jurisprudence, St. Petersburg University, Arkhipov, Yaroslav Muratovich. My question is, says Yaroslav Muratovich, if media space or game space formulate, for example, license agreement or code of behavior, how game collusion can be resolved. So this is the question. Vladislav Vladimirovich, let me emphasize, because we are very much behind the time limit, and also in your presentation, I would like you to be to answer questions as short, make your answers as short as possible. Thank you, Elena Vladimirovna. I'm very grateful to all the listeners who asked questions, because questions are very interesting. The first question regarding symbolic media and artificial intelligence. Yes, in one of my articles, I considered a possible legal applying law to artificial intelligence. I chapter 3. My position is this: before there is some external reference value that would correspond to general symbolic media, it's hard to talk about subject-based law of artificial intelligence. So it's very hard, very early to talk about this. So this is more about fiction, the domain of science fiction, and so maybe being subject to law, where you have special software for artificial grading, but the concept in general is different, because it makes more complicated or impossible, adds another corporate veil on the board. Second question regarding threats of development of the information processes, intellectual property, which leads to sovereignty. I think this is a question, in my opinion, is not connected with the main idea of the thesis, though it's interesting. I would suppose that the answer is no, that there should be no impact. The process of sovereignization of the internet and this process, the process will not be affected. The sovereignization of the internet may so this information is connected with information law rather than I think about the shaman. Question about shaman. I think, especially thank for this question. This indeed is connected with the theme of my thesis, but I have to, as a lawyer, I don't know the facts. That's hard for me to answer exactly about exactly this case. But in this case, I know from some posts on Facebook, and if I trust, Zuckerberg does not always provide trustworthy information, and but speaking in sense, I would say that indeed in each particular situation it is necessary to find out if the real effect of such actions. It always seems to me that magic is not part of our social reality, and will hardly cause has any real effects in the world. But the methodology of my thesis is a question of fact and not of evaluation. The category of threat to the society and the presence of convertible social value. And then maybe as the quote about destruction of as a social being, I had it was a more general metaphor rather than metaphor that can be used in a particular legal practice. This can be the logic. Man is an individual, is a product of an environment, and the environment includes stability. Since in this is the scientific context and not qualified from the point of positive law, as quite distant from specific cases. This quote can be used to develop human rights and about robbery and real weapons. I see no contradiction. I see no contradiction in this the points in my thesis, because in my thesis I communicate that qualification of what which generalized symbol of media can be. But the example with weapons, in my opinion, can be kind of a pipeline, because there is traditional practice, and that is the subjective side of the victim, and so this issue is dealt in from this angle. But agrees with the theory of serialized symbology, and not because it's connected with media space, used as that other practical concept. And finally, the last question: if a gaming environment creates its own serious objects, such as rules of conduct, I believe that, because the question is for, so if I understood the question, then my answer is yes, of course, and it will never be not serious, because in the game, the situation where virtual some connection with the real world, communication connection, this value, the ability to block access, for example, when a player is out of money. I use example when connecting money game. So this courts would not accept such cases, but now cases are. This is something about the consumer rights. something cases can these cases are considered with communal. Yeah, I think I answered my I used up my time, and I see that Larissa Viktorovna sent me one more question. Dear Elena Vladimirovna, there's one more question came. A question sent by Vitaly Vasilovich, professor, Department of History of Law, St. Petersburg University, Doctor of Philosophy. Vitaly Vasilovich is asking who and how sets the semantic limits and where are limits. And let me draw the attention of the members of the Dissertation Council and of the guests that this is the last question that we will accept because, and Vladislav Vladimirovich is also. The question is very interesting because the analytical question is big focus on the language and on the limit is because of language. The best answer to this question. I'm very grateful, and my best answer to this question will be different interpretations. One of them is the concept of heart. I included in my thesis, and this interpretation describes heart's opinions and views. He agrees that the relations between what he calls special legal concept concept word. The relation between the word used in the legal text and the word cannot be resolved on the basis of logic, with the help of logic. This logic cannot answer this question. And there, so to talk about the purposes of the legal act, political purposes, political goals, and not by Mr. Dostoevsky, because the political goals they do not give complete clarity. The semantic limits of law at another level for discussion outside the established social practices, social constructivism, institution concept. They applied is still applicable. I see no empirical evidence against it, and the limits, semantic limits are set by the community practice. The limits are language and social practices. I understand that maybe this position may not everybody like it, but I believe that this semantic limits law determine the width of the channel communication, the language, social practices. Thank you, Vladimirovich, dear colleagues, members of the Dissertation Council. Do you have any further questions to Vladislav Vladimirovich? I seems that no one has any questions. Igor Yurevich, Kozlekin, scientific consultant of Vladislav Vladimirovich. Igor Yurevich, professor from Petersburg University. The floor is yours. Could you tell us? I waited for everything is obvious, everything is clear. As the role of scientific advisor is very simple. Idea is very good. So what is the role? Just the scientific consultant just tell his student to go to climb upwards, and I think that Vladislav Vladimirovich has not he's not reached his summit yet. Great potential. This is a very significant, very good work. And thank you for your attention. I thank Vladimirovich. Did you hear me? Yes, yes, we heard you. Since we're working in remote access mode, I have to ask members of the Dissertation Council, do you still have any unanswered questions? Or maybe the degree applicant have any questions regarding the procedure, or maybe the listeners, others present have any questions regarding our work mode? Dear colleagues, do you have questions? Any questions regarding the work? No. Vladimirovich, you don't have any questions. No, I don't have any questions. Thank you. Beg your pardon. Well, dear colleagues, now we have the opportunity, before we proceed to voting, to take a technical break to discuss the results of the defense session. And during the discussion, sound shall be switched off. What do you think? Do we need any to discuss the results? Or can we proceed straight to voting? Since it's dark, I think we should proceed voting. Yes, I agree. Yeah, judging by. Yes, it's all getting dark already. I'm joking. Professor Biggs, do you think we need to take some time for private discussion? Do you need any time for private discussion?
I don't believe so, no.
Thank you. Well, then let us proceed to voting. And let me remind you that each member of the Dissertation Council has to give his opinion openly. We all can see each other. The most important moment of our session has come. I put the question of awarding to Arkhipov Vladimirovich the degree of Doctor of Legal Sciences, academic specialization 120001, in history, law and state, history of legal and political teachings, to an open individual. Let me remind you that a decision of the Dissertation Council shall be considered positive, more than a half, but not less than 3 members of the Council taking part in the session voted for it. Dissertation Council members present at the session. Ginevra Igorevna, what is your opinion, please? Dear colleagues, I am very pleased to vote for awarding Vladislav Vladimirovich the degree of doctor. He absolutely deserves the degree. Thank you. Lvovich, your opinion, please? I am for. Thank you. Professor Biggs, your opinion, please?
I am strongly in favor of awarding the degree.
Thank you. Nikolai Viktorovich, your opinion? Yes, I'm for awarding the degree. Thank you. And myself, I have a similar opinion that Vladimirovich fully deserves to be awarded the degree of Doctor of Legal Sciences. Thus, let me announce that out of 5 members of the Dissertation Council members participating, no other opinions were given except that to award unanimously their degree to the degree applicant. Thus, the decision to award to Arkhipov the degree of Doctor of Legal Sciences, academic specialization 120001, theory and history of law and state, history of legal and political teachings, has been made. And dear Vladislav Vladimirovich, on behalf of all members of the Dissertation Council and from myself, I would like to congratulate you on being awarded the degree of Doctor of Legal Sciences. And since this is not asked this question, I want to this, and I like to give the floor to Vladislav Vladimirovich for his closing remarks. Welcome. Dear colleagues, dear Elena Vladimировna, dear Vladimirovich, Nikolai Viktorovich, Professor Vladimirovich, I am sincerely grateful, first of all, for the time you devoted to my thesis, to careful study of my thesis, for all your comments and questions. This is extremely a special moment for me, first of all, because this thesis for me is not air paper written because of circumstances, but for me, it indeed is a synthesis which I make sure it corresponds to practical tasks our legal system is facing, and my interest as a researcher, as a scientist. Thank you very much. Thank you, Vladislav Vladimirovich. And still, I have to ask one more question. Because our session was held in remote access mode, do council members or the applicant, others present, have any comments regarding the procedure of the meeting? Do you have any comments? Thank you, Geneva. Vladimirovich, do you have no? Professor Bix, do you have any comments regarding the procedure? I don't. And Nikolai Viktorovich, do you have any comments? No, I don't. Thank you, that's good. There are no comments. Let me again congratulate the author and declare our session closed. Thank you, everybody, for taking part. Everyone, your research, Nikolai Viktorovich, Professor Bix. And please stop the online broadcast. Thank you.